Are you waking up 2, sometimes 3 times a night just to make that same walk down the hall? Have you already tried cutting water in the evening and found it barely moved the needle at all? If both of those sound familiar, I want to ask you one more question before you keep watching. Has anyone ever actually checked whether you're getting enough of one completely ordinary mineral in your own diet? I'm 83, and I want to show you exactly what I started doing before bed that changed my nights. In the next few minutes, I'll tell you precisely what it was. These days, I sleep more deeply and more continuously than I have in years, waking up feeling like I actually rested instead of having survived the night in pieces. I took on a full day of yard work last weekend without the usual afternoon crash that used to follow a broken night's sleep. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I never once considered a simple mineral might be part of the answer. I genuinely resigned myself to broken sleep the way you resign yourself to a creaking knee. Not exactly comfortable, but familiar enough that you eventually stop actively fighting it. Up once, sometimes twice, every single night for so many years that a full, uninterrupted night felt like something that happened to other people. I tried the usual advice everyone hands out. Less water in the evening, no caffeine past a certain hour. Both helped marginally, shaving off maybe one trip on a good night, but the core pattern held stubbornly in place year after year. I remember feeling almost cheated by how confidently that advice was always delivered, as though cutting evening water was supposed to be the whole answer, when in practice it barely moved the needle at all. I followed it faithfully for years anyway, mostly because nobody ever offered me anything better, and a partial fix felt better than no fix at all, even when it clearly wasn't solving the actual underlying problem. My wife started noticing the leg cramps before I did, actually, hearing me shift and groan some nights in a way that had nothing to do with the bathroom trips at all. She'd ask if I was all right, and I'd wave it off as nothing, another small ache to file away under the broad, unexamined heading of getting older. It never once occurred to either of us that the cramping and the waking might be connected, two entries in the same growing list of things we'd both quietly stopped questioning. What I never once considered was whether my muscles themselves, including the ones involved in bladder control, were getting the support they needed to actually relax properly at night. I'd always thought of bladder issues as purely a plumbing problem, never a muscle and mineral problem. I also noticed, without ever connecting it, that my legs had started cramping some nights, a separate annoyance I filed away as its own unrelated complaint, treated with nothing more than a passing grumble and a change of position. It never once occurred to me that a fitful, cramping kind of sleep and a bladder that couldn't seem to settle down might be pointing at the same underlying gap. Here's what I eventually pieced together, entirely on my own. Magnesium plays a direct role in muscle relaxation throughout the body, including smooth muscle tissue involved in bladder function, and it's also closely tied to sleep quality overall. Many older adults run mildly low on magnesium without any dramatic symptoms pointing to it directly, and that quiet, unmeasured deficiency can show up as more fragmented sleep and less muscular ease throughout the night, including in the muscles governing how well your bladder settles down while you rest. That oversight is exactly what reframed everything for me. Sleep quality and muscle function are far more connected than most of us assume, and a mineral as ordinary as magnesium sits right at that intersection, influencing both simultaneously rather than addressing just one piece of the puzzle. For 11 years, the bathroom ran my nights. Up at midnight, up at 2, up again at 5, a weak little stream each time and never quite empty. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, knowing I'd drag through the next day half awake. I thought it was just age. It wasn't. Here's what no one ever sat me down to explain. The prostate crowds the channel your urine runs through, so the bladder never fully drains, it just fills right back up within the hour. That's why you go and go again. It was never weakness. It was never getting old. And the pills they kept handing me, they left me dizzy every time I stood, gave me that strange, dry finish where almost nothing came, and the nights never changed. But there is a gentle way to help that bladder empty the way it's meant to, without any of that. At 83, I finally sleep through the night again. I'll show you exactly what in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's what I actually started doing. Taking a modest magnesium supplement about an hour before bed, from food sources like leafy greens and nuts during the day, and a standardized supplement in the evening specifically. The mechanism involves magnesium's established role in muscle relaxation and its connection to the body's overall sleep architecture. Deeper, more continuous sleep tends to mean fewer of those partial wakings where a mild bladder signal is enough to fully rouse you, rather than being something your body can simply sleep through the way it should. I want to be honest that this is a general, well-established piece of physiology rather than a single dramatic clinical trial result. The connection between magnesium, muscle relaxation, and sleep quality is broadly supported in the research literature, and I'm presenting it as exactly that, a real, defensible mechanism, not a miracle claim wrapped up in flashy language. I started with a modest evening dose, paired with foods naturally rich in magnesium throughout the day: spinach, almonds, pumpkin seeds, building the habit deliberately from both directions, rather than relying on a single supplement alone. I added a few other pieces around it, cutting caffeine and alcohol in the evening specifically, since both work against the same sleep quality I was trying to support. A consistent bedtime, since an erratic sleep schedule seems to undermine everything else regardless of what else you're doing right. I gave the combination about a month before I trusted the change was real. The sleep quality shifted first, noticeably, within the first couple of weeks. The reduction in nighttime bathroom trips followed a little more gradually, but by week 4, most nights had become genuinely uninterrupted. I want to be honest that the first week felt like nothing at all was happening, which nearly convinced me to abandon the whole thing the way I'd abandoned other half-hearted attempts before it. What kept me going was the leg cramps easing slightly, almost immediately, which gave me just enough evidence to trust the process through the slower, less obvious shift in my actual sleep. I also started paying much closer attention to how consistent I was actually being, since a supplement taken most nights isn't remotely the same as a supplement taken every single night. I moved the bottle to sit right next to my toothbrush, the same trick I'd used years earlier to remember my blood pressure medication, and that small physical reminder made more difference to my actual consistency than any amount of good intentions ever had on their own, quietly turning a habit I kept forgetting into one I couldn't easily skip. The leg cramps disappeared almost entirely somewhere in that same window, which I hadn't expected, and which confirmed for me that I'd stumbled onto something addressing more than just the one symptom I'd set out to fix. 2 complaints I'd carried separately for years, filed under 2 entirely different mental categories, turned out to share the same quiet, correctable root the whole time, hiding in plain sight the entire time I was searching for 2 separate answers. My wife and I drove 6 hours to visit our son last month, and I stayed alert behind the wheel the entire way, something that would have been unthinkable after the kind of broken sleep I used to have most nights before a big drive like that. I think about a man named Alvin who wrote in, 68, who told me he'd never once considered his diet might be missing something as basic as magnesium, assuming his meals were reasonably balanced without ever actually checking, the way most of us assume our diets are fine simply because we haven't looked closely. He said learning about the connection between this specific mineral and both muscle function and sleep quality was the first explanation that actually connected 2 symptoms he'd always treated as unrelated: his restless sleep and his nighttime bathroom trips. Alvin told me he'd started adding a handful of almonds to his afternoon routine, alongside the evening supplement, treating it as a genuine dietary shift rather than a one-time fix he could set and forget. He also mentioned that his own wife had been the one to notice his leg cramps first, quietly, the exact same way mine had, which struck both of us as a strange little coincidence when we compared notes. He said it made him genuinely wonder how many wives are quietly noticing patterns their husbands never think to mention at an appointment, simply because 2 separate small complaints rarely feel worth connecting out loud to a doctor with limited time. If you're on medication for your heart, your kidneys, or your blood pressure, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces your treatment, and you should never stop or change a medication on your own. Magnesium supplements can interact with certain medications, particularly for blood pressure and kidney function, so mention this directly to your doctor before starting, even something this ordinary and widely available. What I want you to walk away with is this: not every nighttime symptom traces back to your bladder or your prostate directly. Sometimes it traces back to something as ordinary as whether your muscles and your sleep are getting the support they actually need, a connection almost nobody thinks to draw on their own. I think about how long I treated my restless sleep and my nighttime trips as 2 completely separate problems, never once considering they might share a common, correctable root. I'd have told you, if you'd asked, that they were simply two unrelated symptoms of the same broad decline, filed under the same vague heading of getting older, when really each had its own specific, nameable cause hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to draw the connection between them. So here's what I use: a few drops every single morning. And let me be honest about why it works. One herb on its own nudges one thing, but your prostate answers best when several signals are calmed at the same time. The flow, the emptying, the pressure behind it. That's why what I take brings them together, concentrated, working as one, not a single ingredient hoping to do everything. Stronger stream, full emptying, quiet nights, your freedom back. And none of the trade-offs, no dizziness, no dry finish, nothing taken from you as a man. It's linked right under this video. Go see it for yourself. It won't replace good sleep or your own doctor. It's there to support your body. At 83, I sleep through. It is not too late for you. I think about the man I was, resigned to broken sleep the way you resign yourself to a creaky knee, treating both as simply the price of getting old. And I think about the man I am now, who sleeps through most nights and wakes up actually rested, cramps and all, finally gone. There's a quiet freedom in that I genuinely didn't expect from something this ordinary. If you've ever treated two symptoms as unrelated when they actually shared a common cause, and only found the connection by accident, tell me about it in the comments. And if this kind of honest, specific explanation is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this ahead every single week, and I genuinely read every comment myself, leg cramp stories very much included.